Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my channel. Today we are going to continue on with the Tanlandian Civil War and finish off with the final part of the war in the beginning of the resolution. So without further ado, now let's begin. Just 1 second. Okay. Sufyan would later receive word from President Giv of Greentopia, letting him know that Greenland has begun invading Brazil and that he is already sending troops to their location to help him go on the offensive. Sufyan thanked and bid farewell to Giv, and then he would later tell his men to prepare themselves for their offensive plan. 4 days later, on Monday, February 24th, 2025, at 1:18 p.m., the Greentopian forces have landed on the northern beachhead, where they were confronted by Tasmanian and Tanlandian loyalist infantry, who were firing their artillery and guns from the defensive positions they had made. The first two waves of Greentopian soldiers resulted with them losing heavy casualties, but not before taking out a lot of Tanlandian and Tasmanian forces as well. But on the third and final wave, both sides fought in gruesome combat, from using guns and grenades to hand-to-hand fighting with knives and bayonets. The battle lasted within an hour and 40 minutes, and it resulted with a few remaining Greentopians to capture the defense and 12 prisoners of war. With the Greentopians successfully capturing the northern beachhead, in Tanland, the leader of Tasmania, Emperor Hirohito, ordered all of his soldiers in Brazil to return to Tanland and help defend their colony before it would be lost. As for the Brazilians, they were angered by Tasmania's retreat and felt like that everything Tasmania promised was all a lie. So King Bruno Santos I would later write a letter to both Greenland and Greentopia, hoping to get on their side and help them defeat Tasmania, and as a way of teaching Tasmania a lesson for backing out of their deal. As for Sufyan, he received word from their ally that they have conquered the beach and would soon make their way towards them, and Sufyan told their ally that they would enact their offensive the next day. At 3:27 p.m., Presidents Leon and Giv met at the Tanlandian to talk about the next offensive plan. Excuse me, guys. Next offensive plan, until they were interrupted by a soldier who came to them saying that there was a letter from the leader of Brazil himself. Both leaders asked the soldier to bring them the letter, and as soon as the soldier delivered the letter to them and left the room, both leaders took turns reading the letter. From the writing that Bruno wrote, it has proven Brazil was manipulated into joining on Tasmania's side because of their deal, which was that if Brazil helped them win the war, they could help Brazil in return by aiding him in reclaiming his lost territories, or territories he had failed to conquer. But it also shows that Brazil has betrayed Tasmania and have decided to switch alliances. Brazil in the letter offered both Greenland and Greentopia food, soldiers, weapons, and other materials they have in order to be an ally for them, and in hoping of being their ally, maybe they can help Brazil find a territory to own diplomatically. Greentopia and Greenland debated about giving Brazil a chance, and have decided to go with it. So Leon would order one of his communicators to send a coded message to King Bruno that they would accept his alliance with them if he can aid them on their assault against Tanland. King Bruno received the message and was happy that he avoided his country from being occupied by Greenland and forced to fight them till the last man. Now with Brazil as a new ally to Greenland and Greentopia, they began to plan their deployment on the southern part of Tanland to help them liberate their country. Sorry guys. Now we're going to move on to the resolution. On Tuesday, February 25th, 2025, at 11:52 a.m., Sufyan and his soldiers attacked the Tasmanians that were holding the city of Taiyai defensively. Sufyan's army managed to weaken their defense, but a couple of them were destroyed by Tasmanian light artillery. And Sufyan, seeing this, ordered the remaining 2 tanks to retreat so that he and his men could infiltrate and take out the remaining soldiers. As Sufyan and his men entered the city and engaged in combat with the few Tasmanians that were left standing, The ground beneath their feet began to shake, and the sounds of tank tracks moving in fast made Sufyan second-guess his plan. As his Tasmanian Light Armored Division approached Sufyan's forces, they opened fire upon them and managed to kill a few of his forces, but in return, they have destroyed a couple of their tanks. As Sufyan was giving his order for his unit to retreat, he would be shot by a Tasmanian soldier in the left shoulder, injuring him. As his men were retreating, one of them carried Sufyan on his shoulders to be regrouped with the others for protection and safety. Meanwhile, after the battle, Tasmanians were cheering that they won the battle, but they knew that their enemy wouldn't be defeated that easily. So they called for some reinforcements and the supply of fuel and ammunition for their tanks and soldiers, which would take an hour for them to arrive and possibly another hour for them to be ready for the next attack. As the hour passed, Tasmania has managed to gain more soldiers and resupply the tanks with fuel and their positions remanned. But as for Sufyan's forces, they would soon meet with Lieutenant Turner and his units of Greenlandian armor and infantry. When Lieutenant Turner approached Sufyan, he asked him if it would be okay for him to lead his army into battle to retake the city, which he complied, since he knows that an injured man that as an injured man he could be vulnerable to the enemy, and if he was killed, their revolution would mean nothing. Now that Turner is in charge of Sufyan's remaining soldiers, he ordered one of them to scout the same city that they have tried to capture but failed to do so, which the soldier carried out Turner's orders. The scout would then come back a few minutes later and would report to Turner that the enemy had new infantry along with some anti-tank weapons and medium-heavy artillery. Turner would then tell Sufyan's army to be ready for the offensive ahead. Turner's plan is to place his and Sufyan's remaining tanks in the front, using them as an iron blockade, and as they advance, the men would follow behind, and once the tanks are all destroyed and the enemy's defenses in return are weakened, the infantry would then push into the city and fight the remaining soldiers as they advance. The men would follow behind, and once all the tanks all of the tanks were destroyed and the enemy's defenses were returned, push it to the city and fight the remaining soldiers. For the tanks, his men, who are mostly armed with bazookas, would begin to take out the tanks one by one. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. That was bad on my reading. Anyway, at 1:25 p.m., Turner's forces, along with the remaining soldiers of Sufyan's army, pushed towards the city, and as planned, the tanks destroyed and weakened the first wave of defenses before they were all destroyed by the artillery and some of the Tasmanian Rocketeers. After the tanks were deactivated, the infantry would then charge at the enemy, engaging in close combat, resulting with many of the Tasmanians to fall back or die where they stood. And as the infantry pursued, the remaining tanks once again charged at them, killing a few of their men, but in return, the Greenland Rocketeers fired their bazookas and destroyed all of the tanks as expected, resulting with the remaining few Tasmanians to surrender the city and be captured as prisoners of war. Now with Greenland in the south and the Greentopia in the north, the Tanlandian loyalists and remaining Tasmanian soldiers have decided to retreat their forces within the capital city of Tanghak, where they would hold their last stand. On Thursday, February 27, 2025, at 12:07 p.m., the Allied forces launched their assault on the city of Tanghak. The enemy forces within the city fought as hard as they could to repel the Allies' attack, but the Allied forces came prepared and managed to defeat them and captured the capital. There were 5 prisoners captured, and one of the prisoners was a Tasmanian railman. The officer in charge of the capture was Lieutenant Turner. Turner would call his superior officer, Commander Wynne, and give him the report that they captured the capital, but also would ask Wynne what they are going to do about Tasmania. Wynne would tell Lieutenant Turner that he would ask the president about the situation, and based on what he says, he will let him know. After a couple minutes, Wen would receive word from President Leon to tell Lieutenant Turner that if he has any prisoner that has a radio or a way to communicate with Tasmania, he should make the call and tell Tasmania that he has two choices. One is to release Tanland from their rule and have their independence along with unconditional surrender, or two, continue the fight and will be defeated for good. After Turner received word that Lieutenant Turner received word from Commander Wen on what to do, he ordered the prisoner who had the radio to call Emperor Hirohito. After the radio was set, Turner gave Hirohito the choices that he has to choose, and that he has a few minutes to decide on what he wants for his country. A couple of seconds later, Hirohito tells Lieutenant Turner that he has decided to give up Tanland and surrender to him in order to spare his army. After hearing that, sorry guys, just one second. Hirohito chose to surrender Tanland and himself. Turner reported it to the Allied forces, which they would then cheer with joy. As for the Tanlandian loyalist leader and second command to Chakan Setong, Paul Hun Chun was killed in action, and two of his soldiers were spared and were glad that the reign of Tasmanian tyranny was over. Sufyan would later hear that his country was free, and that he would be now the new ruler of Tanland and its new democratic government. The total number of casualties from this war was 1,093. As for the prisoners that were captured, there were a total of 35 prisoners. These prisoners would soon be released after the trial the Allied forces have scheduled for Tasmania and Brazil. The trial was held on Monday, and the prisoners were released to return home. Now, also, to give an update about what did Brazil and Tasmania deserve. Well, Tasmania had to pay a lot of damages, and for cultural purposes, had to pay reparations basically to Tanland and its people for so many years. Even though they were okay with it before, but now they're like, you've been occupying our country, you've been protecting our country for a while, and you haven't really paid us anything in return to paid us anything, because we've been paying you with all of our stuff, so we need money from you. As for Brazil, even though they joined with Tanzania at first, they believed a lie, but then they realized that when Tanzania had abandoned them to be left on their own to fight with Greenland, so then Brazil would later switch sides and betray Tanzania. In return, Brazil would be granted a pardon for his actions, and he would also be granted a territory in a Pacifica known as Madagascar. Okay guys, so this is the end of the Tanlandian Civil War. I appreciate you guys watching this video, and now with this video over, I can go ahead and work on the other video that I'm about to start, which is the American Revolutionary War British Regular Army Tour. And once that's done, then we'll see what happens next. So without further ado, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.